Hello, everyone. I am Daniel Montgomery with Gold Derby, and I'm here with Charles Bright, one of our brightest contributors and writers. We're here to talk about the 2017 Grammy Awards, which, as we're recording this, aired last night on CBS. The big story of the night, of course, was Beyonce losing Album of the Year. I wouldn't even say Adele winning Album of the Year. It was about Beyonce losing Album of the Year. Even Adele, when she was accepting the award, she said that Beyonce should have won it when she was backstage. She said, "What the F does Beyonce have to do to win Album of the Year?" I think she's speaking for a lot of music fans, even if you're not, even if you don't follow Adele, even if or follow Beyonce or listen to her music that closely, you can't have missed the cultural and social and musical impact that album had in 2016. For her to lose again after 2 years ago, her self-titled album lost to Beck, Morning Phase. It really feels like the Grammys Oscar So White moment, just because it's a little egregious for her this to have happened. At least one, Beck made sense, and even Adele makes sense under normal circumstances, but these two Beyonce albums were at such a level that, if anyone else in the recording industry, if an Adele or a Taylor Swift had recorded these two albums, they would have won for both of them. What do you think about that?
And I'm interested to hear where this happened for you when during the pre-tels, or as they now call it, the premiere ceremony, the huge batch of awards that they present before the televised ceremony, when Lemonade lost music film, something popped up. It's like this thought bubble popped up in my head, and I went to myself, uh-oh. And I thought to myself, ooh, this might, because you would think if any category that would be, as we were joking, we were calling it the best Beyonce by a Beyonce and a Beyonce. We thought that this was kind of, that's why this was made. This was part of that cultural event, and it just defies all words. And I mean, I'm not, and as I was telling you beforehand, I am not. I like Beyonce. I'm not a huge fan of hers, but it really was a WTF moment. When she lost. And that's the thing. I think I got to give credit to Adele for, some people think it's kind of weird for Adele to bring it up when she was on stage. And I know that this is a very mixed thing that a lot of our users have conflicting views about a winner mentioning someone that they beat while they're on stage in their acceptance speech. But I think it was just such a glaring elephant in the room that how could she not? And I think the fact that she at least recognized the achievement was very good on her part.
Oh yeah, I thought it was the perfect speech for her to give at that moment.
She started crying when they said the name of her album, because she was just like, oh no, she was like, I cannot go out there now.
Yeah, and that's what's amazing about it, is because the Recording Academy was ostensibly rewarding her, giving her something good, but what they really handed her was this gigantic burden, which she didn't deserve. I mean, she won Album of the Year, Record of the Year, Song of the Year once before. We figured she was going to win, or at least most of us figured she was going to win Record and Song again this year. You were predicting Formation for Record, which seemed entirely possible also. But for her to win all three of those again, especially Album of the Year, over this particular Beyonce album, put her in a really uncomfortable, unfair position, because it's not going to, her album is not going to look good after this.
Because it will always be associated with that.
Exactly, and it's similar to Morning Phase, which is an album that got amazing critical acclaim, but it's mostly known as the album that beat Beyonce, right?
It's a beautiful album.
Yeah, and
I'm curious. Also, did you half expect her to leave the trophy on the stage, of her just saying, "I'm not going to take this"?
I did. I thought she was going to do the more awkward thing, which would be to invite Beyonce up on stage to accept
I
anyway.
I was worried about that too.
To pull a Ving Rhames and Jack Lemmon sort of situation. But the problem with that is that that's uncomfortable because okay, you could give her this thing, but it's still gonna have your name on it. It's not like they're gonna give her this award now because you decided to.
Yeah, they're
Um,
not going to mark it different in history.
so that would just put Beyonce in a really weird, awkward position of having to get up on there and hold a trophy that's not hers. Um, but so I thought Adele did exactly the right thing. I think to I can see and where this might turn around in the future and make some difference is we saw this year Kanye West and who was shut out by the way 0 for 8 biggest shutout in history tied with Rihanna who also went 0 for 8 last night. Um, Kanye West, Justin Bieber, and Drake skipped the ceremony out of protest, and who would have thought that they would have been so right?
Well, Drake was in London on his tour, I believe. That's what I believe I heard someone say that during the pre-tells or premiere ceremony. Um, uh, Justin Bieber, I just assume, is just doing anything for publicity because he's scared shitless that someone might not think about him in the next 10 minutes. So I'm not sure about Kanye though.
Yeah, well, I did read reports that they had boycotted the ceremony because of the treatment of black artists and young artists. Ironically, is at least what I read from one article about this. Part of me, if these are alternative facts and they prove.
Well, I love how they're boycotting this, yet they were both up for the Best New Artist prize and lost to a black woman, a young black woman.
Yeah, and the youth. When I read about they don't embrace young artists enough. I feel like looking at Justin Bieber and saying like you were nominated for Album of the Year instead of David Bowie and Radiohead.
Yeah,
They
fuck
embraced
you,
youth.
Bieber.
They embraced youth, but they're right about artists of color, of course.
Well,
When even Beyonce losing music film, she lost to the Beatles. Directed by Ron Howard, who is now one away from an EGOT. He just needs a Tony. Apollo 13, the musical. Come on. Uh, Frost Nixon could be like Victor Victoria. Um,
I'd watch the hell out of that. But it has to keep Frank Langella in it. They have to keep Frank Langella in it.
Well, yeah, I mean he's won like 11 Tonys, already, so you kind of have to. Um, but yeah, but I feel like what could make a change is if we start seeing as a result of this some artists saying next time the Grammys come around, like whether or not they submit themselves for consideration, when it comes time to being asked to perform, they could be like, am I, like Chance the Rapper is like, no, I don't have to show up, or or Kanye or Drake again, or any number of artists of color or sympathetic, allies like Adele proved to be, you taking the stage to call out the Recording Academy on what is this. Yeah,
Here's the weird thing is that, yes, you'd normally expect a double standard, but Chance the Rapper took home Best New Artist, and they had whiter options to, well, not saying that Chance is in any way white, but they had white options to go with, or more traditional options to go with. I mean, you could say maybe the Chainsmokers, but okay, that's pushing it. Specifically Maren Morris, and you would think that was that if there is something about, I don't know, I think it's more Beyonce centered, maybe than race or gender, but considering the history of entertainment, you can't leave those things completely out either.
yeah. The Chance the Rapper thing, like I got worried during the premiere ceremony. The music film thing to the Beatles, I was kind of like, okay, I can see where the Grammys would be all, for the Beatles. When she lost Rap Song is when I was concerned. But then Chance the Rapper won Best New Artist, first award of the telecast, and I'm thinking like, she's got this. I mean, they had other options, and for best new other reasonable options. I don't think people would have batted an eye necessarily if Maren Morris would have won. She certainly has the cred, you know. And now I'm looking back on it and thinking, Kelsea Ballerini. It might have been the vote split. Like if there had been one country woman in that category instead of two, would Chance the Rapper have won Best New Artist? And I'm not so sure after that Beyonce loss, because
that's a very distinct possibility.
They really, really like to. First of all, they first like to reward solo women. Second of all, they really don't like to reward hip hop artists. You know, so the Chance the Rapper victory there might have just been a lucky confluence of events for him. Although they did give him Rap Album. It's the first time that a rap album not up for Album of the Year has beaten a rap album that was. So you know, so that's a he did have significant support, so it might have been enough. But yeah, that was an unusual kind of dichotomy there. But I think, on balance, the Recording Academy still needs to deal with their race problem.
One other thing that I think needs to also is that I saw someone post in the forums as I was monitoring them during the telecast. Was someone said, you know, Beyonce is a performer, Adele is a vocalist, and you got to think, you know, the whole image thing, or not image, the whole package that Beyonce is. Maybe there's this other. I'm not saying it's the only aspect. I'm saying it's an aspect of, you know, people, of snobby people in the Recording Academy seeing that package and going, well, you know, it's more about, you know, the spectacle and the stage show and, you know, the show she puts on for fans rather than the music. And I'm not saying that's the right thing either, but, you know, it might be a point of view that's pervading the Academy.
I personally wouldn't even think that that's even necessarily accurate. I mean, if you've heard Beyonce sing, you know, she could hold her own with Adele on any day, you know, and certainly when she went into the Sandcastles, that was equal to anything Adele sang, and Adele sang phenomenally. Both of her performances, or her 2.5 performances, you know, and on top of that, you know, Adele's record had just as many other producers and engineers as Beyonce's did. You know, Beyonce co-writes or writes most of her songs, just like Adele does. So, you know, I mean, if they were going to go with that pure musician route, they had Sturgill Simpson. You know, that would have been the more logical choice to go there. But if you're going to go from one person because she's too packaged to another very talented Adele, but also very packaged, very, you know, lots of collaborators and producers and co-writers on those things, you know, it doesn't quite fly with me. So I would pick a bit of a fight with that forum poster.
Okay.
But moving on from the general field categories for a bit, you know, looking through the pop races, Hello won pop solo, pop album. Stressed Out, 21 Pilots won. They lost their pants, which seemed like a dumb rocker thing to do. It's like, oh, look how edgy I am. I'm accepting my underwear, and it actually turned out to be pretty sweet. You know,
when they explained it, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of nice. I feel good for them.
So it still seems like an odd win to me. I had them in second place. I had so many of the winners in second place. I had 7 Years by Lucas Graham winning that.
I had Work winning that one, so yeah.
Work with, like, it doesn't feel like a pop song. You know, it feels odd to me that it wasn't in, you know, like the R&B field. You know, but yeah. So that happened. One wrong answer that I do not feel bad about at all, because it's the kind of wrong answer that nobody gets. Summertime, Willie Nelson sings Gershwin.
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest jaw droppers of the night, at least for the nerds like us that follow this really closely.
Because I was really sweating it for a bit. It's going like, oh, it's, you know, I was predicting Barbra Streisand, and I was like, it's going to be Dylan, isn't it? It's going to be, I should have switched to Dylan. And then, you know, the envelope opens, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I like that. I like that Margaret Cho got to present that award, and she's just like, I feel so good. And I was just half expecting her to say, "I'll take this for Willie. We both go to the same dispensary, so I'll just leave it there for him, and he'll come pick it up later."
Yeah, I had Willie Nelson in fourth there.
I had him in third,
And I
which of
had him
course
under.
doesn't mean anything.
I had him under Josh Groban. I had Josh Groban in third. Now the interesting thing is looking at the rock field. The second biggest winner of the night was David Bowie. He himself won 4 awards that he himself is credited on, and his album Black Star, if when you add in recording package, won 5. 5 for 5 for Black Star.
And it won the engineered album, correct?
An engineered album, yeah, and he's one of the engineers on it, so he won that one. So clean sweep for David Bowie.
If he had been up for Album of the Year, that would have been. Here's my question: if he had been up for Album of the Year and won, do you think there would be as much talk about issues with the Recording Academy, or would this be more under, here was someone we lost who really was unrepresented by the Academy? I think it'd be different because Adele already has a ton. Yeah. Bowie only won the one over his career, and that was for a music video.
Yeah, I agree. It might have still been partly an issue of style and that they prioritize pop and rock music over urban genres, but they wouldn't have looked as bad. Because not only was David Bowie, was it a posthumous recognition, it was overdue. He had been nominated for Album of the Year, I believe, once.
Let's Dance, yeah.
Yeah, he'd only won 1 Grammy in his career for a music video. He was grossly under-rewarded by the Grammys as a whole. If he had won Album of the Year, I don't think many people would be complaining. I think even more so, actually, would have helped, because if he had been nominated for Album of the Year, Beyonce might not have seemed like the front runner. People might have said, like, okay, they're going to give it to David Bowie. And so her losing then would not have been a surprise. It might have been disappointing still, because, okay, another groundbreaking urban album loses. But there wouldn't have been the sting of the fact that instead of going with Beyonce, they went with an artist who they went with across the general field just 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. They chose to do this again instead of finally giving it to Beyonce for this kind of landmark achievement that she made. So yeah, I do think they would have looked better for putting David Bowie in that category and giving it to him.
And it's hard to imagine the way that this evening played out. It's hard to imagine him losing that after completely sweeping these other categories, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how those panels decided the nominations. I bet he had enough votes to get in top 5, and they decided, you know what, maybe not.
Yeah, and it still backfired on them.
Yeah. Oh, it was so much worse than they could have imagined.
Yeah, this is like a cartoon when someone doesn't know how to point the gun and it explodes in their face.
Yeah, pretty much.
One other question about Bowie. Do you find it weird that they had no one because his band was there from the album, they had no one go up on stage to accept for him?
That was very surprising. I thought, they saved that category. Of all categories, rock song, the songwriting award, not even rock performance or alternative album, which they could have given out, rock song, and to plan on giving that during the ceremony, I don't know how much foreknowledge they had of the results, but I'm sure they knew that it was a strong possibility that David Bowie was going to win that one. Certainly, if they'd followed Gold Derby, they could have seen that. So if you only got 9 categories to present during the telecast, and you're going to give one posthumously to David Bowie, I figured there would have been something, someone there to accept for him.
Like Iman, you would expect like Iman to be there, but there was also like the members of his band were there as well, and they had accepted earlier. told some great stories during their acceptance speeches. They were some of the highlights of the premiere ceremony. And it was weird. And then you just had the Chainsmokers saying, "Oh, we accept this on his behalf." I saw one person in the
Chainsmokers, you do not accept this on his
one of the posters in the forums was basically saying, "I hate it that I see the Chainsmokers with a Grammy."
Well, they still have one of their own anyway.
I know they won earlier in the evening.
Which was not a big surprise there. It was kind of, but yeah. So that was the rock field, and then
the rock album winner.
That was
I mean, well, that was a crapshoot. Anyhow, I think we both had Weezer in number one, but I was kind of like when I saw like the guy from Panic at the Disco presenting during the pre-tels, I was thinking, oh well, maybe he's playing ball with them. Maybe they'll go for that. And then it went to Cage the Elephant. But I
was thinking the same thing about Maya presenting in the R&B category. So I'm like, I switched from Maya. She better not win now. No offense, Maya.
And it was really a crapshoot with this. But this I've never heard of this band, Cage the Elephant. So I must be woefully behind the times. But usually I at least hear of the acts that win.
I think they've been nominated once or twice before, maybe in the alternative field. So I had them ranked third. But yeah, I didn't. I honestly thought like if it's not Weezer, Death of a Bachelor, they'll just retire the category for the year because I didn't know who else would to go with. Maybe Gojira because they had the metal performance nomination.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was one of those I don't feel bad about because I was not even close. I was never getting that one.
Yeah, it was just shot in the dark on that one. Also, I love that Megadeth won a Grammy. I love how the metal performance category has kind of become like the Lifetime Achievement Award for metal because we've seen slowly, artists pick up their first Grammys who have been around. If you know anything about metal music, which I know very little about, but I have some friends that are very involved with it, artists like Judas Priest and I think Slipknot, who have been around for like 20 years at least. Finally picking up these awards, which I think is actually a nice thing. Which is a nice thing.
And then there was the R&B field, which was a complete whiff for me. My second place choices in every single category, which as we've established means nothing because they work first. Cranes in the Sky by Solange, R&B performance. So now both Knowles sisters have a Grammy that they can both beat Jay-Z with next time he acts up. That beat Needed Me by Rihanna, who had a historic shutout 0 for 8, which means she also lost R&B song to Lake by the Ocean, which was...
I got that one correct. I was very proud of that one.
Yeah, just fine.
I think it was because of something you said about the song and about Maxwell, and I thought to myself while we were doing the last one on, I guess it was Thursday or something, when I just went, yeah, I should put that in number one.
I can't remember. I might have moved him. Like I was less. I was a little bit more secure about Rihanna in R&B performance. I was definitely wavering on R&B song. I think I might have before our chat. Definitely, I might have moved him up and then down again or at some point because I chickened out and gone like, just go with the star. Just go with the star. You'll be right more often than not. And no. And then R&B album, Layla Hathaway. After all that back and forth that I was doing in my own head, I ended up with her in second place behind BJ the Chicago Kid, who had 3 nominations. But BJ the Chicago Kid did not win any of those, and Layla Hathaway won both of hers. She also won traditional R&B performance. So,
give up music.
Or give up R&B music. Give up R&B music and stick to country permanently because country, I rocked country. Country. Sturgill Simpson winning country album was not a tough one. Maren Morris winning country solo wasn't a guarantee, but it was a reasonable bet. I'm most proud of a country duo or group. You talked me into Jolene. Thank you very much. And then country song though was the tough one, and I got it. Humble and Kind, which I think it won the CMA award for Song of the Year, and it won the American Music Award for best favorite country song. I was actually predicting it before the nominations were announced. I thought it would get into Song of the Year. So I'm like thinking, I was a little worried that Tim McGraw didn't get in for country performance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, you know what? It just feels more best country song to me than My Church did.
And I got 3 out of 4 on the country. I got all of them except country song, and I was very tempted to switch to Tim McGraw, but I just thought I had this image of Maren Morris holding 2 Grammys up in her press photo, so that's what I went with.
That's often what you see.
Yeah,
like that picture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe next year or the year after, whenever she releases new material.
And then there was rap.
Rap, I was hit and miss. Well, more miss than hit. But again, all second place. All second place for me, except for the one I got right, which was Rap Song for Hotline Bling. Another one you convinced me of.
I'm glad that ended up being positive, because I was very worried I was just talking out of my ass, and that of all the songs to win the songwriting award, it's the one that has just the same 4 lines over and over again. and
unsurprisingly, because it has the same 4 lines over and over again, it has by far the fewest writers. Listening to that category be presented in the pre-show and the it was like reading a novel, listing off all the names of all of those songwriters and even Jimmy Jam, who presented that, after it's like, and the award for most credited songwriters goes. It was kind of madness there, and it went to the 2 guys, and I wonder if that helped. If they didn't want to give it like a 4, 5, 6 minute song, they felt weird about giving a Grammy to 20 guys for it. And maybe
well, none of them, if anybody's curious, none of them beat last year's record, which I can't remember which song it was, but the one that had 19 credited writers on it, and you see it on the premiere ceremony, and it takes like 6 lines of words to actually get all the names on there, and you can hear the snickering of the crowd in the Microsoft Theater. It's very funny.
Yeah, you could have a concert, and fill up a venue just from your songwriters.
You could basically have Bonnaroo with all those people.
So the winners there were rap performance, Chance the Rapper with Lil Wayne and 2 Chainz for No Problem, and then rap song performance was Hotline Bling by Drake, which is interesting because this is the first year that they have given this award to rap song performance as opposed to rap song collaboration, which is why Drake is in here all by himself. He's the only performer on Hotline Bling, but he raps and sings in it. So this category used to be strictly collaborations. Now it's performance to let in a track like Hotline Bling, and it capitalizes right away.
Yeah, it was the one, solo performance in a field of collaborations.
And then rap album, Coloring Book by Chance the Rapper. It made sense to me when they announced, especially after he'd already won Best New Artist, which certainly wasn't a guarantee. But yeah, I think he was rap's equivalent of Casey Musgraves this year. To beat the more popular option with the more acclaimed record. Yeah, that I don't. In hindsight, I wouldn't have changed my prediction. Just because the history of best rap album always goes to an album of the year nominee when there's one available. It was just too strong to predict against. So when you got that kind of math, you go with it until it breaks, and so it broke.
How long it will hold is another question, though. I heard a bit of juicy gossip, though. God was so flattered by Chance the Rapper mentioning him the most of any winner at the Grammys last night, because he keeps a running tally from what I hear. He's going to be a featured performer on his next album. So if Chance the Rapper gets an Album of the Year nomination, God gets one too.
which you know, Beyonce might want to try and figure out how to get that going. Instead, try and get on that track.
She's going to have to outsource to all sorts of different religions. She's going to have her bases covered.
You know what Beyonce should do? She should plan in advance. This year, she should record a collaboration track with basically every other artist recording an album this year, so that if she gets enough in, she can at least win Album of the Year as a featured artist.
Yeah, and that's also one of the reasons I was rooting for Beyonce to win, was because one of the credited artists on her album was Kendrick Lamar, and I'm still sore after last year.
Yeah, it's just So if Sturgill Simpson is cutting another album, Beyonce, get on it. If Taylor Swift or Adele has new music coming out, yeah, collaborate. You know, it's we're not playing around anymore. We all want you to get that Grammy.
Yeah, this is getting to John Hamm level ridiculousness.
It is. You know, if John Hamm
and Scorsese.
If John Hamm and Martin Scorsese had won like 22 times for like best rap director or best rap actor in a drama series or best R&B
best
actor.
Alcoholic performance.
Music video was Formation. That, you know, it was the first award that was that Beyonce was up for in the evening, and she won it. So it seemed like the night was going off to a good start. She ended up winning just one other thing. So that wasn't.
Was that music film Grammy? Because I said that was the moment where I went, I don't know. And was that the same? Was it the same for you, or was it a bit later when that feeling, if that feeling started creeping up on you?
It crept up on me a little bit, but I not in a strong way, because I was thinking about past years where you have someone, you know, like like Arcade Fire wins nothing, and then suddenly they win Album of the Year. Mumford and Sons loses their genre category to Bonnie Raitt, and then they still go on to win Album of the Year. So, you know, and even last year when Taylor Swift lost, you know, during the main ceremony, pop performance and Song of the Year to Ed Sheeran, she still ended up winning Album of the Year. So I wasn't putting too much stock into at least music film, because I thought, okay, maybe they just don't want to give her everything. You know, but so it was Rap Sung that got me worried. It was like, they turned down Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar for Drake's Funny Dancing. So I was that got me worried. I was even sweating best urban contemporary album at the main telecast.
I was too. And didn't you just love how she said, I was so surprised, and then she pulled out her gold-plated acceptance speech? I could not stop laughing when that happened. I was seriously losing my shit when that happened, because it was so funny.
Then there was Best Comedy Album. You got me there. You predicted Talking for Clapping by Patton Oswalt, which won. I was predicting Amy Schumer's Live at the Apollo. I guess I should have known, because I had written the article about how much the comedy album category hates women. I believe, I can't remember it was 3, 4, or 5 women have ever won. Ever.
Wow.
And I think only maybe 1 or 2 women have won on their own. Like I remember one of them was Elaine May. She won with Mike Nichols once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Lily Tomlin who won without the help of a man. For best comedy album, and I had
and Kathy Griffin won too.
Oh, that's right, Kathy Griffin.
And she won for audiobook.
No, she won comedy album. She won.
Okay.
So she's one of the few.
Well, I think I you know, there's as I said before, you know, there was the horrible tragedy that happened with his wife, and I think there is a lot of sympathy, but I think a lot of people are also reminding themselves, because he has worked with so many people, not just in comedy, but in entertainment in general. And he's been such a pleasant presence in these crazy times. His Twitter feed is actually wonderful.
Troll.
Yeah, which I think we may have had 1 or 2 of in the forums. And if I'm talking about you and you're watching and you were just expressing honest opinions, I apologize. But I think that he's I think if people are really going, you know what? Yeah, I really like him.
Yeah, and I think
this was also able to be accessed more universally because it was a Netflix special as well.
and I think Amy Schumer also, and I honestly think for the most part, through no fault of her own, has acquired this baggage, this cultural baggage. These controversies she keeps getting into. She did that Formation video with Goldie Hawn, and a lot of people, Black Twitter was not happy with her about that. So I wonder if there's an unfortunate backlash against her these days. She's not perfect. I mean, she does have some blind spots, but I hope she does come back into the public good graces on a consistent basis, because I think she's really one of the funniest comedians out there.
All 5 of these nominees are absolutely fantastic people. They're funny people, and I think they all represent, I think, some of the best in comedy that's around today. And I think you could. It's more diverse than you might think. I mean, you do have Margaret Cho, who's Asian American. Tig Notaro is a lesbian. David Cross is one of the Blue Man Group, and I think you have an interesting cross section here.
Yeah, and one of the things when I was writing that article on Comedy Album, I mentioned how women are underrepresented among winners. This is the first year in history the best comedy album was majority woman.
Yeah, there you go.
In itself was impressive, so they gave it to the guy
who can be mistaken for a schlubby lesbian. I mean, he kind of has that look to him.
And then spoken word album they gave to In Such Good Company, Carol Burnett, her first Grammy Award, which I was a little, it's hard to know how to judge that category or how to predict that category. I felt pretty good about that one, but I'm thinking well, maybe they want to give it to one of the musicians, but which musician? Patti Smith has never won a Grammy, and Elvis Costello I don't think has won many, maybe 1 or 2. But yeah, again, the most recognizable, the most just flat out likable in that crop seemed to make sense to me.
Yeah, and my guess is that there was probably some parts in the book that required some great performing that only someone like Carol Burnett could deliver. Bit disappointed, even though I had her in 4th, kind of was hoping for Patti Smith a little bit, but
yeah, I had her in 2nd place just because I'm thinking if they're going to go with the musician in this category, they might go with the legend who's never won, if they even know that. I mean, some of these veteran artists are around so long, and they've acquired so much acclaim and prestige over the years that people probably just assume they've won.
Yeah, and especially when you talk about fields like this, where people forget that there are fields at the Grammys for this, and so when you think of them, when you think of Scorsese up until 2006, you're like, oh yeah, and he's directed so much, he's never won an Oscar. But when you mention a sort of comedian, that's probably not your first thought. Oh, they've never won a Grammy.
That's true. Musical theater album. I'm glad I got this right. I'm a little bummed for Sarah Bareilles because I was hoping, Sarah Bareilles would finally win a Grammy. She didn't even have to worry about Hamilton. Hamilton was out, and she gets taken out by The Color Purple, which already won a Tony because it didn't have to worry about Hamilton.
Because it was a revival. It was a revival.
Although Cynthia Erivo did win against Hamilton in the Best Actress in a Musical Tony category, so now she's halfway to an EGOT on this one.
Yep.
Performance alone,
and she's and she's a deserved winner there. I mean that revival was truly something special, considering how mixed the response was to the initial Broadway run of The Color Purple. The reviews were very all over the place for that. But it's nice to see that this one got a lot of recognition, a lot of positive recognition, and it did culminate the Tony Awards, but now it finally culminates for one last time here.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that in addition to Cynthia Erivo as a principal soloist, Jennifer Hudson wins a Grammy for it, and Orange is the New Black star Danielle Brooks.
My girl's tasty. I love her.
So congratulations to her. I really love it when that sort of thing happens, where someone kind of gets an award out of by an avenue you don't really expect them to, which is a good segue to visual media compilation, and a Grammy winner Don Cheadle, who won for Miles Ahead, which was the compilation album for the film Miles Ahead, which he directed and starred in as Miles Davis. And it made sense to me that they might go with a film or compilation about a real musician, because they're the Grammys. They identify with the musicians. So, but the two of us were debating Amy or Straight Outta Compton. We did not have Miles Ahead really strong on our radar. The movie came out a while ago. It didn't really do much in terms of public attention and buzz after it was released. I thought it was a good film. I saw it in 2015 at the New York Film Festival where it played. But yeah, that came as a surprise. And now Don Cheadle is 1/4 of the way to an EGOT. I don't believe he's.
I think he's won an Emmy.
Has he?
I know he's been nominated, but
he's nominated a lot. I'm not sure he's actually won. I'll have to look that up.
But anyway,
while I'm
looking it up right now too.
Okay, let's see. We'll see who gets there first.
All right, got it up here. He's won 2 Golden Globes. He has been nominated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Oh, he's been nominated 8 times, has never won.
Yeah, and I remember a couple of those. I remember Things Behind the Sun he should have won for. But that's a segue. That's another. We'll do the next slugfest on.
I'm about to say, because if that's the one that that's not the one that that Brian Cox won for. That was something else.
So visual media score is another one that I'm proud to have gotten right, because it wasn't the predicted favorite. Star Wars The Force Awakens by John Williams, which edged out the frontrunner, The Hateful Eight by Ennio Morricone, who won the Oscar for that score. I just went by the numbers here, where it's John Williams had won 22 Grammys. He has now won 23. He's now all alone in 6th place on the list of all-time winners. So that's yeah, he's they like him.
Yeah, and he's also one of the few in after the Grammys moved past, because at the first couple of Grammy ceremonies, classical albums or score albums would get nominated for Album of the Year. It wasn't that uncommon to see 1 or 2 of those nominated, but since I want to say the late 60s, it hasn't happened, except. Well, we have had the 3 tenors nominated, but in 1977, he got nominated for the Star Wars soundtrack for Album of the Year, and it was a deserved nomination.
Yeah, lost to Fleetwood Mac's Rumors.
That was one of the strongest lineups we've ever had for Album of the Year. You had, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, the Star Wars soundtrack, JT by James Taylor, Asia by Steely Dan, my personal favorite, and Hotel California by the Eagles. Why can't we have lineups like that anymore?
Yeah, I've had a couple of in since I followed the Grammys in the last 15 to 20 years. I've had 1 or 2 years where it's just like they pulled the nominations out of my brain, but only once or twice has that happened for me.
Yeah.
Visual media song, Can't Stop the Feeling. Justin Timberlake, that wasn't a guarantee, but that was the front runner, and it made sense. Number puts Justin Timberlake into double digits. He's now won 10 Grammys.
I guess I know the song is "Can't Stop the Feeling," but I guess he wasn't able to stop the feeling that he was going to win, because he didn't even show up.
No, he's holding out for the Oscar.
Saving that speech.
Which is interesting, because he's going up against, and La La Land's probably going to win it, but thinking hypothetically, if he wins the Oscar, he will have more Oscars, obviously, than Lin-Manuel Miranda. He'll have more Emmys, and he'll have more Grammys. So he may as well just get on stage and do something, get that Tony. I mean, he'd be 1 away from an EGOT if he won that Oscar, which is so looking back on the NSYNC days, would you have imagined that we'd even be talking about Justin Timberlake in the breath of an Oscar, of an EGOT?
Seriously, in the breath of an Oscar, not just like we're talking about, like, it's not like, oh, this happened. We're like, no, this is serious. It's earned, and there's a chance.
And what's crazy is that if he's probably not going to win the Oscar, but he could come back with an acting nomination, because he's a good enough actor.
Yeah, he was really good in Social Network.
Yeah, and even in Alpha Dog, which was the first thing I saw him act in, and it's just, yeah, he has too much. Give something away. Just be a little less.
I will gladly take one of those Emmys if he's running out of room.
He's got a 10th Grammy. He'll have to make space somehow. So if he wants to offload 2 Emmys, 1 to each of us, I think that's fair.
I think that is absolutely fair.
And then there's that canary in the coal mine we talked about, music film, going to the Beatles. In hindsight, that made perfect sense to me, just because it's Lemonade. It was kind of a landmark moment, in terms of 2016 music, but it's very, very conceptual. Whereas the Beatles, that's a much more accessible music documentary about a beloved artist.
Here's the thing, I know they changed this. This used to be called the best long form music video category, and it was really for concert films. And I was wondering to myself, there's enough documentaries about music that come out every year. They could bring back they could have just left long form music category alone. But I know they were trying to reduce the number of categories overall, so they weren't trying to add anything more to it.
Yeah, it does seem. This went to Amy last year, which it won the Oscar for Best Documentary, and lost Best Visual Media Compilation this year. But yeah, and speaking of EGOT, that got Ron Howard and Brian Glazer their first Grammy, and now they're a Tony Award away from an EGOT. So they will be battling Justin Timberlake in Apollo 13 the musical. Will be battling the NSYNC Story the musical.
We're just talking about Justin Timberlake. I mean, anybody who was watching Happy Days in the 70s, seeing Ronnie or the Andy Griffith Show in the 60s with Ronnie Howard as Opie, thinking of him as almost being a Tony away from having the awards Grand Slam. That's something. Yeah,
it's one of my favorite things about entertainment is you can't even really look 2 years ahead or 5 years ahead. You just never know. Like Melissa McCarthy, when I was watching her on Gilmore Girls, did I know in a decade's time she would be an Emmy winner and an Academy Award nominee? No. Michelle Williams on Dawson's Creek is now on her 4th Oscar nomination for acting. So these things kind of turn in interesting ways you can never really quite foresee, which is one of the most exciting things. It's always nice to look at an artist or an actor or something like that and say, like, I knew them when.
Yeah, there's always that kind of ownership if you knew of them before they were very famous. Like, I remember being very fascinated by Ryan Gosling. I saw him in a little independent movie called The Believer.
I remember that as well.
Yeah, I saw that in it came out in 2001. I think I saw it in 2003, 2004, or 2003. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this guy's amazing. He's going places. And then, when everything hit, you feel that sort of ownership of it.
Yeah, they're this is, continuing to follow this tangent. I always feel ownership. There are these 2 actresses who I first noticed in really not good movies, but they had something. And I'm like, actually, no, three women who had something in really not good movies. And I followed them and it worked out. It was Laura Linney in Congo. And then she became Laura Linney. It was Rachel Weisz in The Mummy Returns, specifically the second one, because she had a much more badass part in that one. So I'm like, oh, this is a star. I'm gonna keep an eye on her. And the other one is weird. It was in Autumn in New York, that terrible Richard Gere Winona Ryder romance. And this really small part. She has like 1 or 2 scenes as Richard Gere's daughter, I think. Vera Farmiga.
Really?
I watched her in this movie, and I was absolutely transfixed by these 1 or 2 scenes that she was in, and I'm just actually, I see you. and so ever since then, I've been following Vera Farmiga, and I was so excited when Up in the Air happened and Bates Motel happened, but I was the least surprised that she had that in her. So now that we've gone on that tangent, which is always fun. What about the show itself? What was your favorite performance of the show? Because it's basically a concert. There were 9 categories given out over 3.5 hours.
It always feels like they're trying to pack way too much in there. Like, and I saw this being echoed by some of the people in the forums. Like I'm going along, going, God, they only got album of the year and record of the year to present. How much longer do we have? Oh, an hour and a half. It gets kind of ridiculous at times. Like as much as I love Pentatonics, there was no reason for that performance. Okay, to just do a Jackson 5 thing. I mean, come on.
It was really arbitrary, but it wasn't quite as bad. I mean, it was longer, so it was more problematic. But I remember when it was Little Big Town was introducing Katy Perry, and they were introducing her by singing a piece of Teenage Dream, and I'm like, why?
Yeah,
like, I like Little Big Town, but I didn't need that. No one. We're gonna hear Katy Perry in a second.
The Lady Gaga Metallica thing, like the whole thing with James Hetfield's mic not working, and the person introducing, I can't remember who it was that was introducing the act. Who?
Laverne Cox.
Oh, didn't even mention Metallica. She just said Lady Gaga, and I was like,
Well, I'll give her credit. She first of all, she went on Twitter immediately, and a couple times she apologized and said, "I love you, Metallica."
Okay, I don't follow her Twitter account, so I had no idea about that.
But I know she just misspoke, because when she introduced them, she said 8-time Grammy winners and 6-time Grammy winner Lady Gaga. It just kind of slipped. I think from that word soup, she kind of just like missed the cue mentally, and it was just. I think it was just a brain fart. I don't think there was any, unintentional slight there.
I'm trying to think. Hold on. I liked. Well, who was it? It was William Bell and Guy Clark Jr. or Gary Clark Jr.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that performance was sensational. I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was it was so great.
Yeah, I like the Beyonce performance. I thought it was, again, talking about her being very conceptual. I did end up liking it as a bookend to her VMAs performance. It feels like it followed the same arc as the album itself, which goes from this righteous anger to this reconciliation. And that's, so at the VMAs, she does this 15-minute medley, and it's a lot of the angriest songs on that album. And this time she's doing much more somber, healing, peaceful. She says at the end, if we're going to heal, let it be glorious. And so I thought thematically it was really kind of capturing and compelling, even though I wasn't picking up everything she was putting down in terms of imagery. But I think that's more cultural references that I was missing, and not so much an issue with the performance. But I was thinking, this is going to be like the VMAs again. It's just going like, okay, Beyonce's performed, everyone can go home. It's like don't try and follow that. And yet, this time, some people who followed her were up to it. Tribe Called Quest, Busta Rhymes, and Anderson .Paak.
God, that made me realize how much I miss Busta Rhymes' music.
That was so outstanding. And then the Prince tribute.
Maybe you could help me with something. Why during the Prince tribute were the Time singing their own songs?
Well, those songs were written by Prince.
Okay. All right then. Okay. I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. So, but especially I thought the Time were fantastic, but then Bruno Mars.
I could have done without the costume, because that just, but that's just me nitpicking. The performance itself was fantastic. And his other performance was really, really great as well.
Yeah, I thought the other performance was good. I always, because I polled Bruno Mars, because he's such an amazing live performer, I hold him up to such a high standard. So the first performance, I'm like thinking, that's great for anyone else, and that's pretty good for Bruno. But then he was saving it for that Prince performance.
I don't. I think that they. I think I. How do I phrase this? I don't think Bruno Mars knows how to give a bad performance. It will at least be good.
Yeah.
But like you said, you have a very high bar for him, which is justified because he is an amazing performer.
Yeah, but that Prince tribute was at least Bruno Mars. I think was the best performer of the night. That moment alone, him on the guitar. You know, every time I think about Bruno Mars, I listen to his music and I watch him perform on stage, and I'm going like, this man would not have a career if it weren't for the mere existence of Prince and Michael Jackson and James Brown. But then he'll give a performance like this, and I'll be like, okay, so he's not just an imitator; he's an actual legit successor. He earns the comparison, not just by being like them, but by kind of excelling at what they do, which is, and it's still true that he wouldn't have a career if it weren't for them. But he sells it on his own terms, which is even more impressive given the references that he kind of invites with his style.
Maren Morris and Alicia Keys, I thought, were fantastic together. I thought that was really surprising, but I thought that was a really good performance.
And I had a good feeling about that going in because they seemed compatible to me. You know, different genres, country and R&B, but if you strip it down to the roots of it, they seem to me very similar artists. Very dissimilar costumes. The wardrobe was a little distracting with the sparkly jumpsuit on Alicia Keys and the sparkly kind of looked like a one-piece bathing suit with like arm capes.
Yeah.
Morris. So that was a little, especially the tone of the song, it felt a little bit like a mismatch. But again, like you said with Bruno Mars's outfit, that's just nitpicking.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was an outstanding performance.
And what about Adele's tribute to George Michael? That was something.
That was a beautiful performance once it actually started and finished. Because you know, she did have that a bit of a false start after one verse. She's like, not going well, need to start over. And I remember last year she went on Ellen after she had her whole flubbed up Grammys performance last year. There were sound issues there, and she says, if that ever happens again, I'm just going to say start over. Sorry, we're doing it over again. And she owned that. Yeah.
And everyone was like, you know what, good on you for doing that. You know, and you know. I think that just, you know, sometimes, you know, I thought it was like a stage, because remember that in the lead up to the 2012 Grammys, there was all that talk about her having bad stage fright. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, is this like getting to her now? But I thought it was a marvelous performance. And Sturgill Simpson was really good too. He was fantastic. I want to go out and get that album now. I got a bunch of money on iTunes right now, so I might as well just go and get that.
Yeah, I have that on hold at the library. I've actually had it on hold for, you know, because what happens is when I put something on hold at the library, I have to wait weeks for it to show up, depending on how many copies versus how many holds there are, yada yada.
And if the people return the copies.
Yeah. I mean, usually people do, but if you know, any one person can keep something out for 3 weeks. So like if you're one person behind and there's one copy, you might be waiting 3 weeks for it. So I got Maren Morris's Hero a couple of days ago, but Sturgill Simpson is still pending. But yeah, I've liked everything I've heard from him. He reminds me very much in terms of in terms of me picking up their music as a first-time listener, like last year, Chris Stapleton. I picked up Traveler last year after his Grammys, and that's an outstanding album, and I expect no less from Sailor's Guide to Earth.
So what were there? I guess we kind of need to close this out. We've been going on for a bit. Were there any moments from the premiere ceremony that you really enjoyed? Did you watch all of it?
I watched the vast majority of it. There were a couple of things that I really liked about it. First of all, is, you know, whenever I watch something like that, I get spoiled because I all of a sudden want all award shows to be like that. just like really loose and informal and like low stakes, and just people scattered around in the room, and Margaret Cho cursing because why not? um, and the way they go through the categories so fast. They have the recording of the guy reading the names, so they don't have to worry about mispronouncing the French nominees, or the all these other opera nominees, and reggae nominees and Latin nominees. So those are all done and in the can. And the way they cycle through them very quickly, but give them time to speak. It never felt rushed to me in an amazing way. And then, there were a couple of those performances, I think specifically, and they ended up winning Best Bluegrass Album, the O'Connor Family.
I think I missed that one, but
that was an outstanding performance. I think that holds up to anything that was in the main telecast. It was so good. I might add them to my hold list on at the library.
I got to tell you, I loved one of the best speeches, one of the most moving parts of either ceremony was in the premiere ceremony, and it was the Best Roots Gospel Album that went to the album Hymns by Joey and Rory.
Yeah.
Joey, it's a husband and wife duo, and the wife passed away. This was the final album she recorded, and it was very moving when he got up there and accepted on his and her behalf. It was just very moving. And I think it was also because he was dressed in overalls. And I was just like, I don't know who you are, but I think you're the most wonderful person on earth, It really was just so moving and a beautiful moment. And then she also popped up in the in memoriam segment later on in the evening. So I thought that was a very beautiful piece for a beautiful moment for them.
Yeah, I really feel like that was, and it's one of the things that I love the I was gonna say creative arts, but it's practically the creative arts Grammys, the premiere ceremony, is because of those under the radar things that you don't really think about or haven't heard, and these are people making music and making their careers out of it and doing it well enough to get to the Grammys, and you may not have heard of the best classical regional roots reggae album, but I mean, if you hear a bit of it, if you see the person accept an award for it, and then that person can apply Grammy winner to their name for the rest of their lives, it's special and it's meaningful and it's important. Those people in those categories, they get more mileage. They're going to get more mileage out of it, winning best classical contemporary, seasonal gospel album than Beyonce or Adele's going to get out of winning album of the year, because Adele's already Adele. So that's what makes awards in general special, is they have the ability to do that. I was following Twitter. There's a writer for NPR who also takes part in Pop Culture Happy Hour, a podcast I listen to, Stephen Thompson, and he was really surprised to hear, he didn't know that one of the artists who won had actually won the Tiny Desk contest, which they do Tiny Desk concerts on NPR, where they do like these YouTube videos where it's just like in a little office cubicle thing, and an artist comes in and performs like a 15-minute set, and he ended up winning a Grammy, and it's like, this could actually make his career and really boost his profile in important ways. And yeah, that's the sort of thing I really love about it. So I really do wish more awards were like, not so much the Grammy telecast, but the Grammy premiere ceremony. And I hope they stream the Creative Arts Emmys this year for that same. I really love to see these sorts of. I want to see some art directors thank people. I want to see some, special class makeup artists, or collect things. We've heard enough from Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
I mean, yeah, and actually, it was interesting. You mentioned that sort of thing, but one of the awards, I'm trying to figure out which one it was. I believe it was best opera recording. One of the principal soloists. Oh no, it wasn't best opera recording. That was something else. I can't remember what it was, but it was just very interesting. He said, I don't know if you remember this guy. He said basically, what do we all have in common here? Because we're all from all these different parts. And he said, it's the grind. It's the grind. We all are around this constant thing. And that's what unites us right here. And I just thought that was a really beautiful thing. And I just love that, one of the soloists got up there. He's an opera singer who, normally, no people, he would not get paid attention to beyond people who are interested in opera. But that was his time to shine, and it was wonderful.
I think that is a perfect note to end on. No pun intended on note. We hit all the high ones. So thank you, Charles, for joining me, and thank you for watching. If you have watched up to this point, 65 minutes in, it's always a pleasure to dissect these with you, and for anyone, I hope to receive pleasure out of watching and or listening to it. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you soon, and certainly to discuss the Grammys next year.
Absolutely.